we've got here is failure to communicate.
All right, so we're recording. So I already told you guys that the main thing I wanted to discuss today was the Gillette commercial, right? And the reason I wanted to do this one is because I remember when that came out, and I just remember listening to people talk about it, whether they hated it or loved it. And to me, I was like, wait a second, are these people watching the same commercial? Like, I just didn't get like how the first part, like, oh, this is what they were trying to say. No, this is what they're trying to say. I'm like, and I could kind of see everyone's point, right? In fact, I remember Paul actually saying something to me, and I was like, wait a second, they didn't say that. And I went and looked back, and I was like, okay, I can see why he thought that. Maybe I was just looking at it differently, right? So that's what I got the feeling from people that they were more like already had their mind made up before the commercial ever came out. And like we know, like with Facebook and stuff like that, a lot of times it's like, well, maybe I agree, but I'm not going to say it to you. I talked to a guy after it happened. I was like, hey, what'd you think of that commercial? And just to test it out. And he's like, oh yeah, the same usual stuff. I was like, you know what? I didn't think it was too bad. And he's like, you know what? I didn't either, but I would never say that to them. And I was like, okay. So I think that it's just, again, we feel like we're going to get attacked. Like, oh, see, you're wrong. But all right. So what I'm going to do is I'll basically just ask a couple questions here, and I'll have you one at a time go on it. All right. And again, like I said before, the goal is to just listen to their whole explanation and then boom, to the next person. All right. So we'll start with Paul. So Paul, when you initially saw that commercial, what was your thought process when you first saw it?
Well, that commercial came out, at least it says on YouTube, in January of 2019. And you got to remember at that time frame, the Me Too movement was hot and heavy. You had some big, heavy household names that were dropping. Matt Lauer. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. No. So I think I muted Bill by accident.
Matt Lauer was after the Judge Kavanaugh hearing and all this other stuff. And there was just a ton of people on the nightly news that were just like people that, Matt Lauer, we watched him every single morning in our house on the morning show. And it's like all of a sudden all these names are dropping. Bill O'Reilly. I mean, you had a whole host of things going on. And really what I thought it was is in some of the cases with a very quick rush to judgment. Okay. We're always saying in this country, you're innocent until proven guilty. Some of these folks were guilty until proven innocent. It went straight through. So when that commercial came out, we were coming at the tail end of a lot of, big things going on. And as a parent of he would have been 13 at the time. I was like, man, everything that I'm doing as a father, and even a father to a 15-year-old daughter at the time, is just a complete failure. And it really caught me off guard. It's like, okay, here we go again. I'm being judged on parenting, how my wife and I are parenting our kids. And it just kind of took me back. Now, there are segments of that commercial that I totally agree with. And there's segments of the commercial that just made me scratch my head and just say, you know what, Gillette, they can do what they want with their money. They can spend their money on whatever they want. I buy Gillette products, still buy Gillette products to this day. I can disagree with it, but it's my opinion, and that's all that matters. So that's how I originally felt about it. I think you really have to break the commercial down into some segments. But it's at the end of the day, like I said, it was like, here we go again. But that kind of hit home because it was something, I use a Gillette razor every day. And it's like, okay, why is a company telling me what I can and can't do? I mean, but like I said, if we get into segments and some target points of the commercial, some of it was good, I thought, and some of it maybe not so good. But at the end of the day, it's their money, it's their marketing team. They can do whatever they want.
Yeah. And actually, we are going to get into the segments. I have them written down into 4 parts. But yeah, because again, the same thing. Like it's okay. This segment is saying this, and I totally agree with that. It's the best way to discuss it. So let me, Bill. Are you still muted? I think, Bill. So and take that off. I'm not going to mute you
I
guys.
just
or
clicked
anything.
off of it. I just clicked off of it.
All right.
Yeah. So, I first of all, may I say, Paul, that teaching context in history, that was awesome. How you kind of put the whole background into it, because that's hugely important to what was going on at the time. Because if we looked at it now, I bet we look at it a lot different than we did.
Yeah, because I looked at it earlier today, and when Josh told me, it's like, yeah, I mean, I get it, right?
Yeah. I have I come at it, and you have a daughter apparently. I have 3.
Yes. Mhm.
And I came at it like framing in the question. I came at it from a breath of fresh air. Like my daughters are constantly reminding me of like things I don't know and things I don't understand, and they're correcting me. And I took it. It was interesting. Listening to you, it was interesting how you took it. I took it as, well, I can go from here forward and try to understand the concept. And again, providing a little bit more framework and context of who I am, I kind of step back. I'm not a conflict aggressor. I'm a conflict avoider. So in my head, I was listening to all these things going, okay, in my head, yeah, that totally makes sense. I come from a background where I guess it's kind of a recent background, but a background where I believe in the concept of privilege. I've accepted the concept of privilege, and I can't fully understand where women are coming from, even though my girls remind me 20,000 times a day. I still can't get there. And I'm like, this helped me to get a little bit further than that. But again, and I understand your point. It's like, how do I make all this work in the finite world in which I live in? So it was, to me, it was a fascinating like reflection moment on who I can become. But I'm not sure who that will be. But at the same time, like, excuse me, this reminded me of that. I thought that was really, really powerful message. Excuse me, something stuck in my throat. And I know I have friends who exemplify this like stereotypically. So again, it resonated with me. Like I'm like, oh, please let this person see this, because they are toxic. They are, there's no budging in their finite world, and it's just like, please let them see what's going on. It didn't work, but at least it was like, okay, I can see it. I can grow from what's going on. So that's where I was coming at it from.
Thank you. And what I said before is people watching it and then thinking to themselves, like, oh, they're trying to say this. And I heard other people say, no, they're trying to say this. And to me, it was like, how can two people look at it and see a totally different thing? But I realized that we do that with a lot of things, I think, and especially Paul brought up a good point of where we were as, in America at that point, where it was like people were just waiting to clash over something. But what did you feel? I know we kind of covered this a little bit, but Paul, what did you feel that they were trying to say with it? Like, what do you feel their overall message when they made that commercial?
Well, I think at that time, if you looked at the time frame that we were in, I mean, every man was a predator. Okay, you had some big names that were doing some really bad stuff. I mean, the way they were treating women, the locked up rooms and this and that, and which ended up coming out to be true. I mean, some big names lost their jobs: Bill O'Reilly, Matt Lauer,
Kevin
Harvey
Spacey.
Weinstein. There were some big names there, and I think what they were trying. Well, okay, so you had those guys, and then you had one of the most publicly held trials of somebody trying to be proven guilty before proven innocent with a Kavanaugh. And I don't want to get into the political aspect of that, but I mean, that guy was getting railroaded. I mean, that was and to me, so, it's like you have all these different rules for different people. And that, for me personally, really created a lot of confusion on my end. And then here comes this commercial saying, well, all men need to act in this way. And if you acted in this behavior, like how we grew up, and I'm sure you're going to get into segments, which I think we can really break it down. It's just like, what gives here, right? What gives? That's where I was coming from. And when you have a big household name as a product, Gillette, I mean, Gillette's everywhere. Okay, it's my daughter uses it, my wife uses it, my son uses it. I'm not one of those guys that says, okay, they put out this commercial, so I'm not going to use their product anymore. Right? To me, hey, that's free speech. They want to spend their money, even though I'm contributing to that. But, you know, at the end of the day, give me a couple hours, I'm thinking about something different, right?
Mhm.
And that's where you got to be, I think.
Yes. And Bill, what did you think they were trying to say when they made that commercial? Like, what was the point behind it?
That's a solid question. I think that clearly they knew the sign of the times, they knew what was going on, and they knew the country was divided. Whether it's 50-50 or not doesn't matter. And they wanted to get into the political foray of the moment. Ultimately, I think, to sell products. But hey, do what you want on that front. So I think, oh, well, I hope, I guess, I hope the moral message was one of, we can get better than this. We can do better than this. We can highlight some of the things that we maybe don't see, that we don't even recognize we're doing. It verbally, unconsciously, body language, that we can reflect on and realize, all right, I can improve in this. You know, I can stop saying to my daughter, hey, you need to stop crying, you need to grow up and be a big girl. All right, that's kind of fair. I mean, she has emotions, she has to deal with them in her own way, and I get that society wants you to be one thing, and I'm trying to help you be that way, but at the same time, we're in our own house and you're letting off steam. And you know, that helped me understand the concept where maybe I was pushing a narrative that doesn't need to be pushed. So I thought of it in that terms. But I do totally agree. They were jumping into the political foray to send a clear message that they wanted to send, and they have the power to do it. And for good or for ill, they did it. So.
And great points, Bill. And, you know, if they wanted to provide examples, and I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself, but, you know, show a young man sitting in his chair for 20 hours a day playing Call of Duty online or listening to some of this music that's out there. You know, there's some, I think, some other much more relevant examples they could use on how to be a man, a better man, you know, than showing a couple boys wrestling on the ground or a guy walking up, maybe not using the right choice of words in the beginning at a pool party with a girl and starting a conversation. You know, I mean, I get all that.
Yeah. Well, that actually, again, goes in the next point, and I'll have Bill start with this one. So in the commercial, obviously, it starts out, you know, just saying like, oh, we can do better, blah, blah, blah. But it starts out with that kind of opening scene where the guys are at they're having the barbecue, right? And the barbecue, they're drinking some beers, they're doing the barbecue, and the kids are wrestling on the ground, right? Mm-hmm. And with that part, I think both of us agree that bullies shouldn't beat up a weaker kid. But what when you saw that, Bill, that part of it, were you like, what did you think of it?
I might be using Paul's words. I might be jumping ahead here a little bit, but the whole part where the guys were standing there and saying boys will be boys and repeating that whole mantra, that to me, and again, I'm coming from the framework of three girls and watching some of the, for lack of a better word, the crap that they pull on them. The boys will be boys argument to me is one that just is complacent to a society that allows men to, you know, they're gonna grab your butt. They're gonna brush by you and pretend like they didn't mean to hit you in the chest when they did. And that wrestling part didn't make much sense in the construct of all of that, but I got the kind of masculinity part of it. Like, hey, we like to watch the boys wrestle and beat the hell out of each other, and we enjoy doing that. And that kind of perpetuates this system of, you know, boys taking charge and boys being, and one of the questions you asked, Josh, like, men taking charge, and that's your job, that's what you do. And to me, I just was like, all right, I see those two things in parallel to each other, and I'm like, yeah, this boys will be boys stuff, I think it's got to change. I think we got to get over it.
All right, thank you. And Paul, what did you see?
That commercial really started off with like a whole scattergun of things, from the bullying to toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
You know, the toxic masculinity, you and I talked, I mean, the way Wikipedia they define it as like sexual assault and all that. I mean, that's criminal. Okay. So for the commercial to say, you know, toxic masculinity, I mean, the definition of that per Wikipedia is you're going to jail. Okay. So to stereotype that. And so when you get into the boys aspect of things, it's boys will be boys. It's like, we live close to my in-laws, and every Christmas or anytime we get together, there's a bunch of grandkids and there's a bunch of boys. It's like, boys go down in the basement, they move the couches, and they're down there wrestling. They're doing their thing. You know, sometimes we feel like the house is coming down. You got to go down there, tell them nobody's hurting each other. It's just what boys do. I mean, Josh, we watch wrestling in our 20s. Every Monday night we get together at Mook's house and watch wrestling, okay? Now, do you want to stereotype that or lump that together as boys will be boys? Maybe in that aspect, but like what Bill was saying, you know, rude behavior, you know, the stuff that you said, Bill, at a bar or whatever the case may be, that's not boys being boys. In fact, that's how I tell my son and my daughter that behavior should not be expected or tolerated. Several months ago, my son actually, in rage, got a 15 and 17-year-old. He cocked his fist back at his sister, and next thing you know, I judge me for this, but I was taking his head and shoving it in a kitchen counter. You can't do that. That's wrong. And so boys will be boys in that situation is absolutely incorrect. But the biggest thing for me was the bullying, and I don't know if you were going to bring that up, Josh, because that is when we can wait for that. But
yeah,
you know, the boys boys will be boys. There's several definitions of that. Is it boys going to a birthday party bringing their Nerf guns? That's boys being boys. You know, like you guys jumping on your dirt bikes and racing around the yard. I guess that's boys being boys. But boys being boys with catching a feel or smacking an unknown lady in the bottom, that's not boys being boys.
Yeah.
Can I just add to that real quick? And I'm not,
that's fine. Go ahead.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Paul, at all. Because I think there are things that are like boys naturally instinctually go towards. So, you know, if you're wrestling around on the ground, you know, and I completely admit, I think some of that commercial was done wrong, like, or not wrong, but not done to the message I think they wanted. I mean, men watching kids roll around the ground wrestling with each other is one thing. You know, if there's a problem with that and you see a problem with that, you're right. You have to step in. You can't allow those things to happen. To not make it political, and Paul, I'm not attacking you at all, so please don't take it this way. But one of the things I couldn't understand was when our president says, Trump says, you know, well, that's locker room talk, when I said all that stuff. And people dismissed it as casual, like, oh yeah, that's the boys will be boys in my head. That's what I hear. So that's where it resonates in my head. And to be honest with you, the boys wrestling on the ground, I went right by that. Didn't even measure on the radar. And I think they did that. I don't think they did that well to get to what I think the message was. So I'm not.
They actually get a better job at the end of the commercial where there was a kid getting beat up and the father intervened. Perfect.
Yes,
that's perfect.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, absolutely agreed.
Well, the first part was really, again, the when I was like, wow, you know, because I had someone when I first saw that, I was like, oh yeah, you know, this bigger kid's beating up on this little kid, and then I had someone say to me like, well, what's wrong with boys wrestling? And I was like, but that's not. And when I went back and looked at it, I was like, okay, I could see how he didn't think that. Like I thought that, but then I was like, well, I could totally see how he thinks it's just two kids wrestling. And again, we used to wrestle all the time. Paul gave me my first DDT. Remember that?
Yeah.
Almost knocked me out. To
this day, that's what I teach. You.
Yeah, that's what I do for a living. Is I wrestle. You know, like so I'm like, yeah, wrestling for boys and girls. Like, hey, if you want to have fun, it's if one says no and the other just does it.
And our son wrestles. He's going to be a freshman. He wrestles competitively, and you know, wrestling it's a sport, but you can get deep into a third period, and it gets kind of freaky for a little bit. I mean, it's like, whoa, is somebody going to get hurt here? But you know, it's part of the sport.
Right. And if the two participants understand the relationship and understand the rules,
yeah,
I don't see a problem with it.
Exactly, and that's kind of the thing is that when I looked at it, both of the people were like, oh, you know, it's just two kids wrestling. Oh, it's this. But they both agreed like, yeah, well, bullying's wrong. So again, it depending on how you saw it,
Mhm.
defined what you said, but really in reality, both sides were kind of thinking the same thing. Like,
Right.
you know,
Right. Right.
and yeah, there's obviously some people who are like, oh yeah, well, there's nothing wrong with that, or guys shouldn't wrestle, or nobody should wrestle at all, and you're gonna get
Because
those.
they think that you're inciting violence, and
Yeah.
really, two boys knocking around at it, on the ground, or even kids shooting Nerf guns at each other. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm more worried about, and I have constant conversations with our son when he plays Call of Duty and stuff like that, just to say,
Right.
look, is everything right upstate? Just have those conversations, and he's
yeah,
got a lot of military. Go ahead.
No, you're finished yours.
Yeah, his uncle that lives just right down the road is a Green Beret, and we always have conversations and stuff, and it's like, look, it's all fake, but and one of our hobbies is we love to shoot firearms, but we're always trying to make sure you're okay up here. I mean, I went through the Call of Duty phase a few years ago. To me, it's just a waste of time, in my opinion, anymore. But for a 15-year-old that has all of his chores done, his homework done, that's his thing.
Right.
yeah.
And I
Well-
find it interesting, and it's funny because I tend to agree with these people more politically who chastise, oh, you can't have them wrestle, you can't have them do this, you can't have them do that. But then they're like, well, I don't see the problem with video games. And I'm like, those two things don't,
Yeah.
they're, and this is what I think your larger point is, Josh, is that we don't, like we stereotype people, or we strongman people into these positions of, oh, well, these people just say this, but then they go and do that. And everybody goes, well, you got to say this, and then you go and do that. And nobody listens to where
Yeah.
we are. And we can reasonably disagree on something and have a reasonable conversation where I'll leave and Paul will leave, and we'll think about what happened, and we'll go, all right, yeah, that was a decent point right there. Yeah, I'm going to build that into my narrative of my own worldview. So I think that's interesting that those things happen.
Definitely. All right. So the second part, and this one can go pretty quick. Online bullying. They kind of real quick talked about the online bullying. I think chances are both of us agree that that's a little bit of a problem. It's kind of something we didn't have to deal with as kids.
Right.
It's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I noticed with that is, and again, I can't really compare it to what the kids are going through, but we've all been bullied a little bit. Paul, anyone of our friends who was around Adam obviously got bullied a little bit, and but you could kind of get away from it, at least for the night. Like maybe you have to deal with it at school, but now it's like you can't get away from it. It's just nonstop.
Josh, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Can you define what that word means? Like
Bullying?
in your head?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I looked it up.
Yeah. All right. So, and I didn't even think of doing this, but bullying to me basically means you are just going after somebody else. You're making fun of them in every single way. I mean, I personally believe, and guys just do this, maybe that's just my way of thinking with guys, but like I got no problem with busting on each other here and there. But once you get past the point, like, all right, that's, or obviously someone just going up pushing another kid that they're not friends with. Like if you're gonna bust someone's balls, you should be their friend.
Mhm.
Anyone not, it's like, yeah, no, that's what you're trying to do.
Okay.
It's
Is bullying a response? Like, can bullying be a response to something that somebody else did that person that's now bullying perceived as a wrongful act? Like I deal with this in school all the time. Like,
Yeah.
Dude, we call this bullying, but how do you call it bullying when the person was, I don't know how to put it, like under the radar, nuanced, pushing this kid's buttons. So
Yeah.
they find out the person who was bullying was actually being bullied, and then you go, wait a minute, and then you got to trace it back 17 years to figure out why this dynamic started between these two people. And I'm like, bullying is a really hard thing. I mean, the state makes it really simple and zero tolerance.
I actually never thought about it that way. But yeah, I honestly just think about the usual, like, a group of kids or one bigger kid, like, just doing what they want and making fun of the kid and calling them names, and they want to walk away. But yeah, I guess there's a lot of different levels to it.
And yeah, because I when you brought that up, I thought to myself, God, does anybody walk around in this world thinking I bullied them?
Yeah.
Like, does anybody think that, I was doing something that fits the definition of bullying? Because
Yeah.
I'll readily admit, we played football out in 3rd grade, and I was a small kid, and I was like, I'm going to take that kid, and I'm going to make sure everybody understands that I took that kid. And I played 100 plays and waited for him to get the ball, and I destroyed it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, does that kid walk away going, what the hell? This kid's bullying me. Like, and then that breaks me into a new hope. I'm a shell of myself now. I'm thinking, oh my God, like,
Yeah.
does anybody walk away thinking that, because I didn't mean for it to be that way, but, and I think
Yeah.
kids have a hard time rationalizing the concept of bullying and what it means.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess I never really thought about it that way. And again, that maybe I obviously I don't really like saying like, oh, this generation and this, but like I'd be lying if I didn't say there's plenty of things that I'm like, all right, we're kind of pushing the envelope here a little bit. Like not everyone has to just because someone doesn't get along with you doesn't mean they're a bully. Not because someone says something that's not nice to you doesn't mean they're a bully. I think we're kind of pushing it that way in a lot of areas, but also I think, well, each generation, hey, we've learned a little bit. Maybe some of the stuff that we used to do as kids, maybe we can get better with that. But
right,
I don't know. To me, it's that happy medium that we either seem to be here or here.
Right.
So Paul, well, you already said with online bullying.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's bullying to me is targeted, prolonged harassment is what it is. Like you said, I mean, you can say something stupid. I still get made fun of my chicken legs and my big ears, right? But it's ball breaking, right? But the most dangerous thing going right now is at school, and Bill, you probably is this, okay? Because you can see it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and the next thing you know, you have somebody in the cafeteria say, look at this text that somebody said about you, and then they start scrolling, and then it's just a disaster, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we were growing up, if you wanted to call somebody Danny, a butthead, you got a fat lip, right? Yep. But you had to have the gonads to go up and do that, okay? Not saying that that's right or wrong, but that's how we grew up. This cell phone thing or this texting is just weaponizing, and then it brings everyone to an equal point. So bullying can happen. Anybody can bully. Mm-hmm. Whereas before, if somebody was bigger than you, you wouldn't go up and bully them, right? And that you had the respect thing. And it's a big deal. I mean, our kids go to 2 different schools, and it's an ongoing thing. We hear stories of it. Our daughter was involved in it a little bit, but we got it corrected. She was a victim of, or I shouldn't say, I hate to use the word victim, but it was targeted towards her.
Right.
Tell you what, kids, when kids don't have any consequences that they have to pay, and they can do this via texting or videoing and all that, very dangerous, because, and you know how these kids get, they have a hard time approaching, just a social thing, talking to somebody face to face. And when you're doing it all through texting and all that, people just say the worst darn things out there. I don't have an answer for it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things you can't just say, grow up, get tough skin, because it just goes on and on and on. And this stuff is really bad. Some of the stuff that's out there,
Yeah.
Tough.
Yeah. I never thought about it like that. I didn't like, I can realize how kids
see it all the time at school. I mean,
yeah. My kids, of course, my 2 daughters are younger. The other one's, going into kindergarten next year. So it's, I haven't had to experience that. But I will say what you said about like people, when you talk face to face with a person, one, you tend to just be nicer because that's kind of a human response, but especially when they're bigger than you.
Yeah.
Chris Rock famously said it in one of his things, is like, when I'm talking to a guy who's bigger than me, I know there's this area that I don't go into.
Yeah. Right.
But I can understand that as kids. Like I know even on Facebook, Bill knows, I know, Paul, you don't go on Facebook that often, but I tend to talk to people even on Facebook the way I would face to face. And then every once in a while you get someone, I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, would you really talk to me like that? Like, I'm not, not that I'm a big tough guy, but like, what the hell's going on? Like, I just said one thing and you're coming at me like, to me, I can't stand that.
Yeah.
The keyboard warrior thing, like, and I've had people say to me like, oh, well, it's just Facebook. I'm like,
nah.
Talking is talking. Yeah, talking is talking. If you say it on Facebook, I believe you believe it. So All right.
I will say, Josh, just to interrupt, I apologize.
Yeah.
That comment you made about trolling has totally stuck with me. Like, I've heard trolling before, but I've never fully gone through the aspect of what people are doing to me. Like, that rant I gave to you on Facebook was like my thought process, my brain in action going, are you serious? People do this crap? And it's become something my kids look at me like, are you serious, Dad? Are you, like, what are you, born in the 30s? And I'm like, okay, now I get it. I don't know who's who anymore. I mean, they don't wear t-shirts, so I can't tell. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm feeling kind of bullied right here. Like, you're doing this just to ramp me up and get me going, and then walking away going, ha ha, look what I did to that. To me, that's bullying. To me, that's you're bullying me, man. If you don't have principles, don't bother talking to me.
Yeah.
So that's
well, this is I don't think this has to do with any political side. Like, there's so many trolls out there. It's like, I just want to make people mad because I'm bored and I want to have fun. And it's like, I can't understand that, but apparently it's just people culture. Like doing that. Like, and that's why I always say, like, there's so many people when it comes to all, on the news, on media, who I'm just like, they don't mean that.
Right.
They don't mean that. They're just saying it. What do you mean? Why would they? I hate when people say this. Why would they lie? I don't know, because people lie all the time. Mm-hmm. Like, really? We don't know that people lie? Like, sometimes people are just saying stuff just to get the click, just to get the like, just to get the response. Mm-hmm. And it used to be that in my mind, that was a small part of all of the media, but now it just seems like I need to say something to get that YouTube clip. I need to say something.
Everyone's become super hypersensitive. And like how we started off, it's like, we're having a great conversation here. We're listening to one another. If you're on a news cycle or a news segment, you've got 2 minutes to state your point, and they end up talking over one another. They end up, neither one of them make any sense. They get way off the reservation in regards to the topic goes. And it's just like Twitter, our president says some really stupid things. It's like, why on earth would you say that? Right. And I can't disagree. At times he's a bully. I mean, it's like, you can't, this isn't, 22-year-old talk, it's because what he throws out there can't be taken back. It's like shooting a gun. You can't get that bullet back once you pull that trigger. And whether it be Facebook, whether it be anywhere, it's out there, and it's all over the world.
Yes, and that's something we didn't have to deal with as kids. I do feel sorry for the kids nowadays dealing with that, because we've all said stuff where I'm like, damn, I'm glad that's not on tape somewhere. Right. Just because we were being stupid or doing, maybe having a couple of beers when we were young or whatever it was. Like, and now kids, literally just yesterday, my sister was sending me something that was happening in her college where these two people were just having a discussion on Instagram, and one of them recorded it and then put it on there. And like, it wasn't the best thing to say, but it was, all of a sudden it was just like, man, you can't, nothing's private anymore. Nothing is, and it's sad that, literally, like, you can't get away from anything.
All right. Every second.
So, and I guess I had a couple more, but the other one where you saw the guys going up to the girls, and then the other one, like, oh, that's not cool or whatever. When you saw that, Paul, start with you. What did you think they were trying to say with that?
Well, I mean, it's so the pool party thing to me was, when you're in a setting like that, and especially if there's alcohol involved and stuff, I'm not saying that was good behavior, but there's got to be interaction. I mean, how I met my wife, I met her at a bar at a restaurant. Okay. If a girl walks by out on the street, that street thing there, I have traveled a lot around this country for work. I've never seen somebody, just, out in the middle of the street like that, just, kind of hound dog somebody like that. I'm sure it happens, but there's got to be interaction, right? You can't just text somebody or if somebody has the gonads, and that's one big thing with boys these days, they don't have the gonads. I mean, my son is scared to death to talk to a female. He's 15 years old. Okay. Now, if they come up and talk to him, he's okay. Right. He'll talk, but to go up and initiate that conversation, he just won't do it. And you can't simply say you're not allowed to talk to women, or turn your head if there's somebody that you find attractive. I think that was a very tough message that they were trying to point out.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. Bill?
No, I agree with it. I mean, a 30-second, or I'm looking at it right now because I'm trying to remember the scene you're talking about. In a 1:45 commercial, I mean, to try to get that point across and to try to tackle that in the first place. I mean, I guess bravo to them. I don't know, because it's such a gigantic topic, and they were, to steal Paul's words, they were just shooting stuff. There was like a shotgun of things everywhere. Staying on one topic might have been more focused, and then make 6 or 7 of them would have been more appropriate, maybe. Again, as the father of the 3 girls, unwanted advancements, dude, and you get the message. I see that, and I agree, Paul. You're absolutely right. There is this weird line, and I felt it too as a kid. I won't lie about it. Like, what's appropriate to do? What's appropriate to say? Like, they way generalize that situation to the point which I can't say hi to a girl. Like, that's why are we talking about this? It doesn't even make any sense. Sexualizing women without humanizing women, I have a problem with. So yeah, think in your head whatever the heck you want, but saying it is out of the bounds.
Yeah.
But
what's
if you're sneaking a peek and you think nobody's looking, what's gonna happen? And you get caught, own it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Don't do the look away, pretending thing. Be like, yep, you got me.
Mm-hmm.
I admit, I think you're a pretty girl.
Mm-hmm.
It might even work. Who knows? But this whole thing and the idea of just sexualizing women and making them feel bad for their sexuality or for their attractiveness or not attractiveness, to me is beyond. We're humans here. We're playing a game. We got to all play by the same rules. So,
Paul, did you want to add something?
I think their message was messed up.
Yeah.
And I think Paul pointed out exactly what the message that was messed up. And take it as a 2-minute segment and kind of drive a little bit deeper. Don't shotgun these 14 different positions. So
it's like Gillette. Gillette's a big, a very large company. And when I watched that commercial again, I remember this year's Super Bowl, the halftime show, because we always go to a Super Bowl party. It's like, imagine if Gillette tried to show that commercial after. I mean, the contradiction, it's like they're just messing with our minds, okay? Yeah. And so we're at this party. All of our kids now are teenagers, teenage girls, teenage boys. There's a couple of younger kids. But halftime show comes up, and the wives are all about the halftime show. And it was like, the game didn't even mean anything after the halftime show, because even my son was like, nobody watched the halftime show, right? And it's just kind of you see what I'm saying? It's
what do you do with this when you left it hanging there, and now what do we do?
Yeah,
we go back to a bunch of men wrestling on the ground. It's like
but they say that's bad behavior. Okay, so they're stereotyping us.
But I'm making money off the same thing.
Yeah. Then you have J-Lo, okay, who's older than I am, and I'm like, even I was like,
oh yeah, I actually didn't watch the halftime show, but I heard a lot about it.
I didn't either, but I heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I know, it's like a mixed signal. It's like, what you're saying you don't want us to advance, but then I know what you're saying. And I think
I have the same conversation with my girls. There were things I'm like, seriously, you going out of the house looking like that? And they're like, well, I should be able to wear what I want. And I'm like, okay, yep, that makes sense to me. But you do understand that that's not going to be the message you send to other people. Now, I'm not saying anything about rapes and anything.
Right,
I'm not talking about that at all.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about they don't want boys looking at them the wrong way. They're very empowered, wrong word, very strong women who are not going to put up with that shit.
Right. Yeah.
But yet they walk out the door and I'm like, you're sending a message that you're weak.
Yeah.
And that you are like, and then they watch, like you said, Paul, like you see things on halftime show about empowering women, and then boom, they're walking out there and they have nothing cover themselves.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, like getting back to that whole thing, boys will be boys. We're sexual creatures. Like
bingo, and you hit the nail right on the head there. And it's but there's respectful ways of going about that.
Correct, and there should be like stated kind of cultural norms that we accept that I think are off now. I agree.
but that's up to me as a parent. I think the parenting has a very strong aspect in all this, right? And that's one thing that's a whole nother conversation is, and even in my generation, the lack of parenting, the way I parent, broken homes and all that. I mean, that's a whole nother video chat. But yeah, parents and fathers, I mean, yeah, you've got to have a strong presence, equally yoked with your wife, of course, but you got to have a strong presence.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
So I think you guys both brought up some great points. But yeah, with the commercial, when I saw that, I was like, okay, well, you kind of ended it before anything happened. Like, did the guy go up to the girl and she was like, I'm not interested, and he walked away, or did he keep pushing it? Because going up to and talking to a person you think's attractive is not wrong.
And that changes the narrative, right, Josh? So if he grabbed her or say, hey, then that's bad. That's wrong.
Yeah, but it's like, well, so I think that, yeah, it was just all mixed messages, which someone actually said this to me that I was like, oh man, you bring up a good point, is that they wanted to be kind of vague so they get response from each side. And this was another good point. She's like, because it was a woman who said it to me. She said, she's like, they probably did that on purpose. Even if they made guys mad, they made women happy. And women go, most still, the women will do, in families will do the shopping. So they'll go and buy Gillette and they'll buy their husband the razors. And I was like, oh my,
overtone to that.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, they maybe they did that on purpose.
Yep.
And yeah, it's another thing that Paul said that I just want to hit real quick is that he's talking about, and I can say this about, I believe all of us, hopefully myself too, like, I think we're good dads and I think we're involved with our families and stuff like that. And, coming from a broken home, we can kind of, think about it different. Like all our values and stuff came from our parents, other people that we knew and stuff like that. But yeah, I'd be lying if I didn't say that having people in the, two parents, whatever it may be, two parents can be, have its advantages than just a single parent. Or I shouldn't say a single parent. That's a wrong thing to say, but like,
it's just a different environment. It's just
two people doing a job tend to sometimes do it better than one,
or they can balance each other off, or there's other things that can go on.
Or they get stereotypes that like, oh, well, if you're, a gay couple or a lesbian couple, like, oh, obviously you hate all men and so on and so forth. And I guess it's all what you experience. I personally, through teaching, have had two couples, women couples who had a boy. And they brought him to martial arts and they were like, yeah, we want him to have a strong male role model. And we saw your school and stuff like that. Like, yeah, you're doing great, like, so the idea that like, oh, if you're that, you hate all men, in my experience, I haven't seen that personally, but.
And there are examples of it, but it's fringe,
Exactly. But yeah, having that family background where we see stuff like that and parent and be there and talk to them. Like even Paul saying like, yeah, he plays Call of Duty, but I talk to him about it. Like, how many parents don't talk to them about it and just say, oh, they're fine. I'll just ignore them. Like, well, that's when you're not, oh, wait, you think of it that way? Like, no, I'm going to let you know. So, yeah, good parenting obviously always helps out in those situations.
And with good parenting, you guys got girls, I got a daughter. If something ever happens to them, who's the first person, if they were to get harmed or something, who's the first person they're going to come running to? It's going to be us, right? Until they get married, right? Or whatever decision they make there. But, that's something that all kids, like you said, Josh, whether it be, whoever their parent is, wherever their situation is, they've got to have a parent that they can find shelter and find safety in.
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely.
I totally agree. All right. So we covered that. And I basically wanted to I think it's just two quick things here. Moving forward, and again, Paul brought up the toxic masculinity thing, which I'm torn on that because I do think there's some masculinity that has been like pushed, like, oh, this is what a man should be. Like a man should be in a bunch of different things. You don't have to do this to be a man. You don't have to do this to be a man. But at the same time, I'm like, I personally know a lot of guys who feel like they're being attacked with that wording, where I'm like, I just think that the using that word toxic masculinity makes it where a lot of guys are gonna be like, well, what are you saying? I'm toxic. So I just think that the wording behind it really ruins the whole conversation that could be had about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, and certain things like, oh yeah, well, yeah, there's definitely guys who are toxic. There's definitely guys who are like, I'm a man, but like, that's not everyone. And so why are you saying toxic masculinity? Like all masculinity is toxic. But I guess it's, again, how you think about that wording. Oh, well, no, I meant this. Well, that's not what they're hearing, you know? Right. So I don't know. I always think that is just worded very badly.
Yeah, I think where that term comes from is that folks get, I mean, we're all judgmental people. And that's one thing that I've struggled with throughout my life. And I try to improve with it day by day, is not to judge people. I mean, you know, you can look at somebody and say, you know, they may look at you saying, oh, look at him, you know, big guy with a beard. He probably was over in, Afghanistan killing people, right? Because you have that look. That's judging people. People would say, well, he's got to have toxic masculinity, whereas somebody that's dressed in a dress shirt and a tie and pants may be something, you know, different. And that's what I think that whole term is just being judgmental. I mean, it's, and that's a tough spot to be in. You know, our son loves to work out. He's 15 years old. He wants to wrestle. There's thoughts of him, you know, he wants to go wrestle at West Point and get out and be a Green Beret. Okay, cool. My nephew is in the robotics class down at the high school. Very talented with that. Cool. Is there any difference in masculinity there? No. You know, it's just that, you know, one kid wants to do something else. Bailey, that does robotics, is a great soccer player. There's nothing wrong with that, you know, but where that whole term came up, it's like, I mean, I just didn't get it. So if a guy, you know, works out or runs or keeps himself in shape, does he get the term toxic masculinity?
Yeah.
Or, you know, I guess I really, you know, when I looked it up, like Wikipedia said, you know, it's like, it's sexual assault, you know, you want to, you know, just to take head and nail. It's like,
yeah,
masculinity is I think, like a medical term, is just something that it's like a man has testosterone. I mean, that makes him, you know, more muscular than a lady in most cases.
Yeah. Well, I think that's very true. And again, that's why it's the wording. Like, well, you know, some people, I talked to a person once who said, oh, toxic masculinity, that just means that we don't want the kind of masculinity that is toxic, where you think you can control. I'm like, well, I don't take it like that. I take it as, you're a man, you're toxic somehow. Oh, we didn't mean that. I'm like, well, you might want to word it differently then, so you don't get that kind of response. But it probably came about because people got all worked up about it. And they're like, oh, everyone's talking about it, let's use that wording, you know?
Yeah, it's like Black Lives Matter and white privilege and all those words that get, like,
there's a lot of words.
If you don't look beyond the surface and if people don't explain it correctly, it turns into, what are you talking about, man? I've worked all my life. Or, what do you mean? I'm a man, so therefore I'm wrong in every situation and everything I do. It's like, no, that's not the point. That's not what we're talking about. But again, I mean, your point is valid, very valid. Yeah. But what are the words we use? Like, how do we get the conversation started? Yeah. You know, where do we go from here? You know, like, how do we make it something where, and it has to be, you know, we live in a culture where it has to be on a bumper sticker or it doesn't stick.
Yes.
You know? If you don't do that, then it doesn't work. So you're caught in this catch-22 of, I want to kind of make a point out there, but if I don't make it something that rhymes or alliteration, something catchy, and then when people go, well, it's catchy, so what do you mean by this? It's like, well, let's all look at it and kind of tear it down a little bit.
Yeah.
But we don't, and then we start yelling at each other and calling each other ignorant. And it's
yes. Yeah. Which is the bad thing, you know, one of the negatives about all the communication we have now and quick. Paul brought up about, you know, being on the news and having 2 points to make, or 2 minutes to make your point. Like, you can't really explain anything in that amount of time. But I do think that I'm not saying, you know, media is bad and stuff like that, but I think a lot of it has to do, like, they want clicks, they want this, and when they use that wording, whether it's wrong or right, everyone starts talking about it. Oh, we got to do this. It's like you're making it a problem when it really, I think a lot of people agree, yeah, we don't like the guys who are like, you know, try to control women, try and do that, but then, you know, you make it sound like if you're a man, oh, you must be horrible. Like you
Right.
obviously you're a man and you do whatever you want. Like
Right.
there's a big gray area in there.
Well, what crushes me is that it's all about division, and I don't understand that. Where all of a sudden that comes about. It's if you turn on the news, there's people arguing. There's you turn on the news tonight. I mean, the country seems to be falling apart at the seams, and really, it's division. But really, what it needs to be is tolerance. Okay, not bringing on what's going on right now. That's a whole nother conversation. But here we are. We've got three people, and like I always tell anyone, it's like we'll probably line up on 98% of the stuff. Okay. Now, if you want to get in the sandbox on stuff that's really irrelevant for the most part, or at least in our lives, then yeah, I guess there can be some banter back and forth. But at the end of the day, I mean, the vast majority of the topics, we're all going to line up because we just want to be respected. We want to respect, the other people. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. The old saying is love your neighbor more than you love yourself. There's a lot of truth to that. Put somebody else in front of you for every once in a while. And that's what the problem is today too. Is everyone's like, well, I got to be first. It's all about me. It's all about me. Well, life goes a lot easier when it's not. Giving is better than receiving.
Yeah. And even the stuff we do disagree on, I think if we found ourselves, we'd be here instead of here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I see your point, but everything has become, as Josh has put it, like the almighty dollar is like, more clicks I get, the more hits I get, the more money I get, and not to drive political points, but you got people on both sides doing that, like just sowing division and sowing the seed of anger. And we may disagree on something, but I think we both can walk away and be respectful to each other and say,
right.
You know what, you drove me to think about my own position more critically, and I like that. I want that. I crave that.
That's what makes us better. That's what makes us better people.
Yeah. But instead I get called names, and I'm like, well, we start calling people names. You can't do this anymore. You just can't. So. Yeah,
I totally agree. In fact, I actually would kind of like to end on those notes because I think you guys made great points there at the end. I had like one or two questions that kind of were the same what we talked about, but I couldn't agree more with what you guys just said there. I mean, that's honestly, I've been thinking about doing this for a while, and I don't have any kind of thoughts like, oh, this is going to get big and people are going to watch it. But my hope is that this kind of talk becomes more fun and entertaining for people to listen to than the fighting on the news stations. Oh, they got you. Like it makes me so mad whether it's a Democrat or Republican when they're like, oh, look how they owned them. Look how they own them. It's like
there's no point.
Yeah. I remember watching a Joe Rogan podcast. I forget the guy on it. He was, and he's like, really the way that the debating and stuff is always important, but like it got to a point where we're not having conversations anymore. You go in there like, this is my point. This is what I'm gonna prove, regardless of what's said.
I don't even hear what he said. Right.
Yeah, when we sit down and talk like this, and which I'm gonna say, after we end this, I'm just gonna do a little ending thing, but it's going into a conversation where like, oh, well, you're just ignorant. You don't know what you're talking about. Like, where do you think the conversation is going to go after that?
Right.
Like, if you mock someone, I mean, I've had someone say something to me where I agreed with them, but as soon as they treated me like a jerk, I'm like, okay, I'm going the other way. Just because you're a jerk, I'm going to be a jerk back. Like, it's just not the kind of conversation. I watch the news and like, they'll start the interview with whoever. And it's like, okay, the rest of this is pointless. You just said something that made the other person mad and made them offended. Like, you wanted to do that. So, which Bill, I say on Facebook all the time. It's like, were you trying to change someone's mind, or were you just trying to get all the people that already think like you to give you a like?
Right.
It's so my hope is that with the podcasts and the stuff that people do, like that will get more interesting. I know for myself, I love hearing those podcasts where they go over a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, Rogan's one of the best. I mean, he definitely gets you thinking.
Yeah. Yep. All right. I totally appreciate this. I honestly don't think it could have gone any better, and that's exactly why I wanted you guys to do it, because I knew that you could talk about stuff, disagree, and still be super respectful to each other. So I really appreciate that. And
I don't think we disagreed on much of anything, honestly. It's
which is another point I was trying to make. I
Yeah.
think when we have conversations like this, we realize we're way more alike than we're different. And Paul, I thought, brought up such a great point about like, yeah, you can vote for someone or support someone and still say, no, I disagree with them on this. Like, you shouldn't do that. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And people just feel like if I say anything against the team, you know, I mean, Paul makes me think of this wearing a Boston hat. I grew up as a Boston fan because of Paul, because he told me with Roger Clemens, he gave me that Roger Clemens card, and you're like, yeah, Boston are the best team. All right, I'm a Boston fan. But I was never the Boston fan who said the Yankees suck. Like, well, they don't. I wish they did, but they don't. Like, to me, that just seemed crazy, why you have to believe the other team is horrible. I want them to lose, but yeah, they're actually really good. And what's wrong with saying that, you know?
It hurts my heart.
Yeah, like we just feel like, because, and I've had it happen to me where like I'm with this group and I'm like, yeah, but I don't agree with that. And they're like, oh, well, you're going. Bye.
Then they line you up in all these categories that you're not.
Yeah.
You're like, wait a minute, how did
It's
we
like,
get here?
man, we got to get away from that to where it's like.
That's why I really lean a lot sometimes being a libertarian. You know, it's just you just kind of ride the fence. You know, be in the middle on a lot of things, and most people are. There's just a few topics that people just will take to their grave, and I respect that. I get it. But at the end of the day, we're all Americans, and you know, if we all just got along and tolerated each other, just listened to each other, I think that would make things a lot
Yes.
better.
The one thing that scares me is I think it's human nature to, the one emotion that I think all, you know, politicians, media, whatever can take advantage of is the anger one, because I feel that motivates people more than anything else. So it's like, how can we get them to start doing this and vote for this? We need to get them mad. It's like, because again, I mean, I wish that we didn't think that way, but I just think that when people get pissed about something, they'll take action. And when it's like, oh yeah, you know, that's good. Like, no, that doesn't get you to, you know, take the time off and go vote. Like, it's unfortunate.
We don't think for ourselves anymore, and that's what the problem is. We either get stuck on one news channel, 24-hour news channel, and just get basically indoctrinated by it. You know, when the whole COVID thing started, I started doing research on my own, listening to a bunch of different people. And then like I tell my kids, put your own puzzle together, make your own decision. You're old enough, you know, you're young adults. Just don't listen to one person and say, oh, they're right. You know, listen to everybody, draw up your own conclusion.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be awesome if they went on the news and said, this person said this at this place, and you think what you want about it? Yeah, like, okay. But no, you got to tell me how to feel.
Where Paul said you got, like, they give people 2 minutes to explain their position, then they spend a half an hour dissecting that position. Well, let them speak for a half an hour and let us decide. Like, why do you have to pay all these people to say things that honestly I don't really want to hear? And let them articulate a position so that we can actually critique it, and then they scream at each other, and it's like, what are we doing? What are we even trying to do here?
Or you're exactly right. They rant on something, like you said, 2 sentences for a half hour, and then they bring in all these commentators and they try to dissect, and it's just like, it's just meaningless.
It's just absolutely trying to fill time where you could fill time being newsworthy, but you don't, and you gave that ghost away, because in the end, and Josh is right, we'll watch fear, we'll watch anger, we'll watch screaming, and we as a society have to decide we don't want this anymore. Let this go. And I want to hear somebody intelligent who's an expert in a field tell me something for 20 minutes. We're adults, we can do that.
Or admit if they were wrong, right?
Yes.
Right.
Nothing wrong with admitting you're wrong. There's nothing wrong with saying like, oh man, I never thought about it that way. Like, you're not. Right. But that's the thing. People feel like, oh, I can't say that because then they got me. They won. What the hell did you win?
You didn't
win anything. It's just, oh yeah, you kind of had a point there, you know?
Yeah. And it's something I want to think about, and I want to, you know, mull over in my head, you know?
Imagine sitting back and thinking about something before we talk about it. It's just crazy.
Right.
All right, guys, I totally appreciate it. I plan on doing more of these, and I will put it up. I'm not going to tag you guys, but if you want to tag yourself, because again, I know we use first names and everything, but if you wanted to tag yourself or anything, but hopefully I'll have it up by tomorrow morning.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah,
guys.
don't tag me or anything, Josh, but I really appreciate this. And,
Yeah, I won't.
Thank you for the opportunity. If you
And
do it
Paul,
again, or I'm
great
open
seeing you,
for it.
Paul.
Yeah. Be safe,
Yeah.
guys.
It's crazy.
What's that?
I said it's crazy. Seeing you
Yeah.
35, 40 years later is nuts.
We're not that old. Well, you guys are older than
I
me.
am. I am. I'm that
How old are you? 49?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
I'm 44, so not too far behind you.
When my dad was 49, I thought, okay, he's going to keel over any day now. So I'm trying to adjust to the idea of 50 is just mind-boggling.
Well, your grandfather's how old?
94.
Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's mind-boggling to me as well. Like,
Yeah. All right, guys.
before we go, Josh, I just want to thank you for this. And if you do any more that you want to invite me to, great. If you don't, I totally understand. But I enjoy this. So anything that makes my world a little bit of a better place, I'm all in. So
Yeah. I definitely plan on doing more because I have about 15 topics that I want to talk about.
Yep.
But yes, I definitely will let you guys know.
Yeah,
Sounds
and
great.
I want to echo that too. It's good to see you guys. I appreciate the opportunity here, and appreciate the conversation. I really do.
All right.
Sounds good,
Be
guys.
safe.
Thank you.
Yep.
Talk to
Stay
you later.
safe, guys.
All right, guys. So if you did watch this podcast, I really appreciate you watching. This is the first time I've ever done one of these, and it's something I've been thinking about for a long time. And the main reason, and I know that you heard a lot of us talk, you heard the people talking about it during the podcast, was I really hate the conversation that we're having as people. And I'm not even talking about just the country in general, but I see people I know, I see family members, I see people just bad mouthing other people they know, right? And we all have our beliefs. We might think, liberals are mentally ill. We might think all conservatives are racist and horrible people. But the way I always thought about it is I know people who I care about who are conservative, who are liberal. So how can I say that about them? Like, I don't feel that way about them. And that's why I had these two guests. You don't know them, but they couldn't be more apart when it comes to political affiliation. And we agreed on a lot of stuff just because of the way they were talking. I think we can agree both of those guys are not stupid guys. Right? They're very smart. They're very intelligent. They both mean well. So just the wording, that people use, it's just, I feel it's driving us apart. And I hate that that's happening. So again, when I see people I know saying, oh, stupid liberals, racist conservatives, like, there's someone that you care about who is in that party, who voted for that person. Do you feel that way about them also? And I honestly do think a lot of people do that because they're just mad in the moment, or they're so fed up with the division that I got to fight back by being twice as bad. And I just feel we're getting to a place that it's going to be very hard to come back from. Once we disagree with each other for that long, it's like, I think people agree with a lot of stuff, but I mean, we're 3.5 years in this administration, and we can go all the way back where I'm not going to say I'm wrong now. I'm not going to say they were right about this now, and I think we have to be a little bit more accepting. And if someone changes their mind, or even changing our mind ourselves. But the big thing again is for me is the division in all of it. Like, I go on social media and I talk to people, and I heard something once that said that I thought was really smart, and it made me think, is that our way of communicating nowadays is so totally different than 20 years ago. and I'm talking about people my age, 40, where we didn't grow up with that stuff. It's so different. And we tend to think that, man, all these people are crazy and all these people are hating against each other. But that's only because when we go on social media, those people are the ones who are talking. Those people are the ones who are screaming. I think we've all been in situations, we go to a party, we go with a group of people, and you'll have those 2 or 3 people that are getting annoyed with each other or disagreeing with each other, the ones that ruin the party, the ones who start the drama. And now all of a sudden, that's all of us together on this one website, right? And we have all these people we're friends with, but there's that group of people, me involved, who are always bringing up this stuff. And it's like, man, everyone's thinking this way. And I just don't think that's the reality of it. But again, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I don't know exactly what I'm going to name it yet. And if anyone would like to be on it and discuss a couple things, I know I have friends on Facebook who, and social media who talk to me about political stuff or just social stuff in general. And if it's something you'd be interested in to do, I'm definitely down for it. So thank you guys very much.